All right, welcome back. Because today we've got the fun Christmas story of Black Jesus and how he was born in the projects in Detroit, Michigan,
Oh man,
and he grew up to become MLK.
you're gonna get us in trouble, man.
We're gonna get canceled within the first 5 seconds. It's better than what I could have said.
No,
But
that's
welcome back, everybody, to Beyond the Campfire. Almost said the wrong name because we've been talking about another podcast. But yes, welcome back. I am your one of your hosts, the Cowboy Will, here with the wrong Indian Steven.
that's right. I'm Steven, aka Sahil the Indian, aka Sahil the Disciple, aka Mister, aka I'm gonna run out of names soon.
We're
So
fixing to like not let you introduce yourself at all because you always start off like AKA, AKA, AKA. You got more AKs than the Russian army.
oh man, we should go fight them sometime. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Well, if the conspiracy theories are right, they might be here to liberate us.
Oh boy. So yeah, welcome to Beyond the Campfire. As Will said, our topic today will be the Black Hebrew Israelites, um, one of the fastest growing cults in the United States today, and actually spreading into England and several other countries as well. Um, so yeah, me and will break that down. We will try to be sensitive for the most part. I think yeah, definitely it is something that is very racially heavy, but at the same time, as me and will get into, this group itself is very racist, and we want to we want to fight against that as well.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, so
Sure.
well, any thoughts, comments, questions before we jump right into it?
Well, we got some good news for you folks. I know that these cult episodes have been very heavy. Like Waco was very heavy, Heaven's Gate was very heavy. Like so, Steven and I, as you guys know, we had a ghost story kind of recently, the Mary Celeste, in a sense. So this is probably the last cult we'll cover for a little bit. Like we might cover a cult like once a year, just because we want to keep this podcast funny. We want to keep this podcast fun, informative, and all around having a good time. Where with the cult, it's very dark, depressing, and very much like, yay, wow, people killing themselves, people killing other people in the name of their god. Fun.
For
And
sure. And this one's not going to be quite as bad. They do some disturbing stuff, and obviously, I mean, Black Hebrew Israelism is a very broad term. There's several different groups that kind of fall under that umbrella, and not all of them agree with each other. But yeah, as Will said, we'll we'll kind of stay away from that for the most part, just because me and him were reviewing our old episodes, and we're just like, man, these ones were these cryptid episodes are funny, these conspiracy ones are kind of interesting, and then it's just like, oh, here's the cult one that is very
it's like,
right.
well, how, and it's like how do you make a joke around it, like because it's like you can come up with a, like, no matter what, I feel like you could always find a joke in something. But it's like with the cold episodes, it's very hard for me, especially because it's like I want to come up with a joke for it, but I don't know if it's too insensitive or too dark for some people, and then some people are like, okay, I don't like this, and then they tune away. So it's a very kind of touchy subject, and that's why we're wanting to keep this podcast fun, lighthearted. There will be moments where we'll get scared. There'll be moments where we wonder what is going on, but we don't want to take it too dark. Like Jack the Ripper, that was pretty dark, but I feel like me and Steven were kind of able to bring some lightheartedness to that darkness. But it's kind of hard to do it with cults because it's a very very touchy kind of subject because cults are really much more recent stuff.
Yeah, no, for sure. And um, yeah, it's just one of those things. Maybe we save some of this stuff for the Patreon.
Yeah.
But but yeah, we'll go ahead. We'll go ahead and get into it. So, Black Hebrew Israelism, as with many cults, is pretty modern. It's more recent. Unlike some of the other cults we've talked about, some of these cults have kind of ended more or less. I mean, I think there are a few Branch Davidians around still. I don't really know.
Hmm.
I don't really know what they do anymore if they do still
They just
exist.
kind of like chill, I think.
Yeah,
And
you
then
know,
you've got, the biggest cult that's still going on, which the people inside the cult say is not a cult, and that is Mormonism.
Mormonism. Yeah, shout
Yep.
out to one of our friends. I don't think she would appreciate being named, so I'm not gonna. But
She's a Mormon.
she is a Mormon. Yeah, became one. But Black Hebrew Israelism is a movement that started in the 1800s, specifically as founded by a man named Frank Cherry, which I'll talk about him in a second. But basically, it is a broad belief that the true Hebrews, the true Israelites, are black or African American, um, and that the Jews that typically when you think of a Jew, those guys are fake. Many Hebrew Israelites will say they are the synagogue of Satan that is referenced in the book of Revelation. But yeah, broadly speaking, it is the belief that again there are true Jews out there that are of uh, black skin, or you can, depending on which group you're talking about, will also include Latinos, Native Americans, and some other groups in that. And so this belief kind of started with with two guys really. Um, the first guy was a guy named Frank Cherry. He was a African American man that lived in the southern United States in the late 1800s, and he basically was uneducated, but he taught himself Hebrew and Yiddish. And in 1886, he started to claim that he had a vision that African Americans are the descendants of the ancient Israelites, uh, and that they were the true Jews that Jesus came and died for, and that the for the Israelites that realized who they were, that believed in Jesus's name, that they would be given the kingdom of heaven, and that all the other races of the earth would one day serve them. So,
So they're like black Mormons in a
kind of,
way,
yeah,
because like the Mormons believe, like the white Mormons believe that the blacks are like the, not good people, but then like the Black Hebrew Israelites don't believe the white people are good people. So it's kind of like black Mormons
yeah, and
in a way.
Mormonism has kind of evolved, so it's not quite as racist as it
Yeah.
used to be, but yeah, I would be very curious to see a traditional Mormon, one that believed that black skin was a curse. I would be interested to see that person meet a Black Hebrew Israelite and them get into it and debate which way is better.
I wonder because okay, so Mormons, like there's that website where you can request a Mormon to come to your house and talk to you. I wonder if there's like the same kind of website for a Black Hebrew Israelite. So like we can do that, and like me and you could be like hiding in the bushes and be like, "Are you the one who requested to meet me?" And it's like, "Let me tell you about Jesus." And it's like, "Well, let me tell you about Black Jesus."
and
And
then
then
they
it's
and then they just fight.
World Star, World Star.
Oh man, oh man. So yeah, it's a very interesting belief. I've actually met Black Hebrew Israelites, so there's actually a lot of them around the Atlanta area. Uh, there's many groups of them in New York and other parts of the U.S. They've actually recently started to spread into the UK and other European nations as well. So we will see how this kind of starts. But Frank Cherry, 1886, he begins to preach that white people are inherently evil and hated by God. He starts preaching this in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So, yeah, right off the bat, very racist, very just unbiblical in his teaching.
Yeah.
So yeah, not a great start. Um, but yeah, so they basically, when pressed, like, how do you know that black people are the children of God and white people are the children of the devil? One of their favorite verses is the one that says, Jacob I loved, Esau I hated. That is, let me pull up the reference for that. But basically, they said, hey, Israel had two sons. There was Jacob, who became the father of the Israelites, uh, or black people,
Mhm.
and then you have Esau, who becomes the father of white people. And so, in their view, both of them were born of Israel. They were given the promise, but because Jacob was faithful to God and because Esau despised uh, the blessings given to him, they said God blessed Jacob, he blessed Israel, and he rejected Esau, and hence you get the verse, Jacob I loved, Esau I hated. And so
Yeah.
depending on which group you talk to, some of them are a bit more milder than others, but some of the more extreme groups will just say, like, yeah, because of this, only true Israelites, i.e., Black people, Native Americans, Latinos, can be saved. White people can't be saved, even if they believe in Jesus Christ. So um, that's kind of a broad belief of all of the groups. Again, some of them are nicer than others, and we'll kind of talk about what that means specifically. But
Yeah.
broadly speaking, that is their general belief.
Man, oh man. It's funny because a lot of people are like, blacks can't be racist. Well, let me introduce you to my buddies, the Black Hebrew Israelites.
For sure, it's interesting, and not to get too political, but I think some of the people that argue that blacks can't be racist say, well, in order to be racist, you need to have some kind of structural government power. And I just first of all, that's not how racism is
Now,
historically defined. But I mean, even if you want to define it that way, I do think we are at a point in history where a lot of minority groups do have significant positions of power in a lot of
yeah,
places. And I think of an incident a few years ago where black student groups, not primarily black student groups, I mean, there's other groups involved in this too, but they declared uh, I forgot exactly what it's called. Let me look it up so that I'm not forgetting it exactly. But they basically declared a day of non-whiteness, and so they said, hey, any white professors, any white students, don't don't come onto campus if you're white, because we want to make today about minorities. And for me, that's a clear taking over of institutional power to enact something I think
yeah,
is quite racist. So
yeah.
let's see. I can't find it off the top. I think it happened in Canada. So
Canada.
I know, right? Yeah, I'll have to go look that up later. Um, but yeah, well, I think you made a great point. I think white people are definitely not the only ones that can be racist. Minorities,
Yeah.
be
Listen,
taken apart.
at the end of the day, we all got a little racism in us, okay?
I, that's going to be on a life advice with Will. I think you're somewhat right. I think we live in a pluralistic society today, but historically speaking, uh, white people have tended to hang out with white people. Indian people have tended to hang out with Indian people, and that's not a bad thing per se.
Hmm.
But people tend to want to be around people that are like them. Now, that's no excuse to be racist. That's no
No.
excuse to go and
Yeah. And
bully.
I
And
feel like there's like a difference, between being like racist in a hurtful way and then like me and Steven joking back and forth. You know?
oh, for sure. I mean, I
Like,
I think rather than pretending you're not racist, I think everybody could take it upon themselves to say, like, hey, yeah, there's probably going to be some biases I have just as a
yeah.
simple human, but how can I work to overcome some of that stuff? So
Yeah. Yeah,
I
and
mean,
it's
a friend.
yeah,
So.
right. So don't be racist to strangers, be racist towards your friends.
There you
Life
go.
advice. Do me and Steven make jokes that he steals my social security number? Yes.
There we go.
Does he
Think.
make jokes that my people colonized his? Yes.
Oh yeah. Which knock on wood, India beat England in the semifinals a
Let's
couple
go
of
England. Or let's
right.
go Brit.
Yeah. So
Let's
one of
go
my friends
India. Sorry, I was having like a
DM'd me.
stumble there.
She saw that on that I posted that on my story, and she's like, "That one's for the ancestors," and I'm like, "Yeah." It's like beat those British people.
Oh, this is great.
Dude, I feel like I always
See,
end up making fun of British people on this podcast. I don't know why. It just
dude, let me tell you, I've got one reel from Haley that she made, and I've been keeping it in my pocket since like since the Owlman, which was almost like 10 episodes ago. I've been keeping it in my pocket to like release on 4th of July. And it's like where, you're like saying something about like, oh, Britain sucks. And then like it's got like a bald eagle and it's got like the Star Spangled Banner blasting. And it's like, there we go. That's what we're gonna, and I'm like, I'm saving that to post it on 4th of July and be like, our British listeners can suck it. Today's our day.
there you go. I think this episode's gonna come out a day after the
Yep.
4th of July, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so there we go. How's hopefully you're feeling very patriotic when you're listening to this episode. If you're in America, I know we have a few listeners in some other countries. But I think like 95% to 98% in the US. So
we're not international yet.
Not quite yet. Yeah, we have a few. You
want to know why we're not international? Because we make fun of every country that's not America.
I know, right?
You got freedom? I bet you don't.
I was about to say the one British person listening to this podcast is throwing his phone against the wall right now. So.
Oh man.
I was about to make fun of South Africa too because India beat South Africa in cricket to win the World Cup today. So I am a happy camper. But I think we have one or two listeners in South Africa actually.
We do.
So maybe I shouldn't make fun of our South African friends. But
we just lost those 2 viewers.
I know, right? Yeah. Next time.
That darn Indian. His white friend.
I'm just there's gonna be racism rumors about me now. They're gonna be
it's
like
funny because I was sitting there and I was like,
every country that's not America or India.
It's so funny because I was sitting there, I'm like, okay, we're gonna do the Black Hebrew Israelites. It's a cult. Nothing funny is gonna happen. And here we are, 17 minutes into this, and we're being racist to other countries. We're making so many jokes, and all I remember is some cherry guy.
Frank Cherry, yes.
Frank Cherry.
So, this episode's actually ending up a little bit more sillier than I thought it was. So, anyway.
That's because we just got like a 10-minute spew about racism.
I know. All right. Let's get back to Frank Cherry. And this is why you guys listen to this podcast, though, right? Yeah. I mean, you can, if you want to get like a really professional rundown version of Black Hebrew Israelism, go listen to Mike Winger or my Vocab Malone. But
don't listen to us if you want information.
But yeah, if you want
to us for a good time,
if you want to listen to this cowboy and Indian over here, we're gonna have some fun along the way as we get through this material.
I know. I can't wait for when we can do our Patreon and me and you are in the woods hunting cryptids at like 3 a.m.
Oh man, I'm surprised you haven't talked about the presidential debate. I'm not going to open up that kind of worms, actually.
No, save that for your podcast.
There you go. I will. See, mine's going to be a little bit more serious, though. This is the fun podcast.
This is the fun, spooky podcast.
There you go. So, okay, Frank Cherry. I'm going to just say a few more fun tidbits about him, and then I'm going to kind of accelerate into what happened today. But Frank Cherry, kind of a few core beliefs he had, which some of that bled into modern Hebrew Israelism. Some of that's not quite as present today, which because it just simply can't be. But Frank Cherry was an anti-Semite. He said he can't be anti-Semitic because he is a Jew, but for like real actual Jews, he was very anti-Semitic towards them because he's like, oh, these are fake Jews and they're appropriating my culture, and it's just like, dude, like.
That's just a fake nose. You bought that at Party City.
Yeah. So he's anti-Semitic. He believed the earth was flat. So, which I think some Hebrew Israelites today still believe that. But he believed the earth was flat. And this is probably the wildest belief. And pretty much, pretty much no Black Hebrew Israelite group believes this today, with the exception of a few radical ones. They've just shifted the timeline. But his kind of last message was that Jesus Christ, who was a black man in their belief, Jesus Christ would return in the year 2000 and he would start a race war.
Hold up. You're telling me my Jesus, who preaches love, was going to start a race war?
That's what Frank Cherry thought. He said Black Jesus is going to come down and he's going to declare a race war on white people. So
Man needs
obviously,
to read his Bible better.
most Hebrew Israelites don't believe that today because obviously, if we're looking at our calendars and hopefully I'm looking at it right, the year is 2024. So unless there was a big race war in the year 2000 that I missed, started by Black Jesus, I think we're okay. But safe to say that Frank Cherry was a false prophet.
Oh yeah,
Just kind of going off.
just hang him up there in the hall of the great false prophets,
Oh yeah, for sure.
up there with Joseph Smith.
Hmm. Uh, so he passes away, and his church, I think a few dozen churches started under him. Most of them kind of die in the early, or rather late 1800s. However, Hebrew Israelism probably would have died out after Frank Cherry's death if it wasn't for another man named William Saunders Crowdy.
Oh, don't put my name out there. Great, taking my name.
I know, right? So William Saunders Crowdy, he emerges on the scene in 1896. So about 10 years after Frank Cherry was kind of at his peak, and he founds a church called the Church of God and Saints of Christ. And really, the vast majority, if not all, Black Hebrew Israelites today get at least their intellectual birth from the teachings of Crowdy. So Crowdy read a lot of, he kind of read and studied some of Cherry's writings, and he kind of worked to intellectualize it, refine it, reform it, and make it more palpable to a larger base of people. And so, really, with William Saunders Crowdy, you start to have a big, widespread movement of Hebrew Israelism spread from Kansas to New York City, and eventually to places like Atlanta and other parts of the United States.
Yeah.
So he's more moderate. He kind of chills out on some of the more extreme teachings of Cherry, although he's still very much is in line of like, okay, yes, there are these true Israelites, and our mission as Black Hebrew Israelites is to spread our message throughout the United States, and for Israelites, i.e., Black people that receive the calling, that hear that, wow, I actually am a true Israelite, and I put my faith in this Black Jesus and this Black Yahushai, which I'll get to what Yahushai is in just a second. We will receive the kingdom of heaven.
Yeah.
Uh, I have a theory of why I think this message has received some popularity and continues to have popularity. Uh, you know, Slavery and racism in the United States is a horrible, awful thing, and it's awful that it happened. But the result of it is you have millions of African Americans that have felt like they've been put down, they've been beaten down, and they've been oppressed. All of a sudden, you get this message that you are the true children of God, that God had a plan for you, even in your slavery, that one day you will be served by white people. There'll be kind of this reverse
Yeah.
racism, slavery thing. I think not saying certainly not for all Black people, but I think that was a very attractive message for Black people in New York, in Atlanta, in some of these other more urban, poverty-stricken places, and I think that's why you see Hebrew Israelism spreading even today.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. That's where whenever you're talking about Frank Cherry did this in like the what'd you say 1880s, I'm like, I mean, I don't know how old he was, but my guess is if he was in his 30s or 40s, he could have been an ex-slave and just kind of was a little, disgruntled about what had happened and wanted to get back at the white man and decided to say, well, I had a vision. You guys ain't going to heaven. We are, you know. it's very possible that's what could have happened. And I think we talked about our conspiracy brownies. Now we got our Hebrew Israelite brownies, and you got some good batter there mixed together. That's making some good brownies, and it's because you had a lot of tension going on, and it just kind of led to a good little idea of, well, what if we're the only ones to inherit the kingdom and the white man goes to hell? You know.
There you go. Uh, I know we only have a few minutes left because, um, yeah, I do want to get into the modern day Hebrew Israelites because that basically covers the history.
Mm-hmm.
So there's about 20 different Hebrew Israelite groups. I mean, there's more and more groups being spread out every day, but I'm gonna split them into two broad groups. There's the extreme group, who I've encountered before, and then there's a more moderate group who I haven't encountered as much, although they are the more moderate group seems to be growing in Atlanta. Uh,
Yeah.
those ones aren't quite as bad, but so I'm going to talk about the moderate group first, and then I'll get into the extreme group. So the moderate group actually does make some exceptions, and they do say, "Hey, non-Israelites, i.e., white people, can be grafted into the kingdom and actually can go to heaven one day." Uh,
Yeah.
they cite the Bible verses where Jesus and the Apostle Paul talk about branches being grafted in.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're saying, hey, if you recognize your place, if you recognize who Jesus is, what he did on the cross, and if you recognize that Christ came first for the Jews and then for the Gentiles, you can be grafted into the kingdom. And even though you are a white person, even though you are a non Israelite, an Edomite that Jacob I loved, Esau I hated, Christ, Black Jesus, can show mercy to you, and you can be brought into the kingdom of heaven.
Oh, well, that's kind of nice of them. Being like, hey, here you go, come on in. So at least they're not totally racist.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. So with the Hebrew Israelites, my niece is just give her a little. Well, I'll let you say something while I greet my niece real quick.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that's kind of good that at least like that just kind of shows again, you kind of look at the Mormons like their beliefs are kind of wrong and they are a cult, but that they were able to adapt more to modern society, which to me kind of could almost be an indicator that it's cult and not a religion because look at Christianity, we've been the same ever since Christ came to this earth, and he was the only one that really kind of changed the laws of some things, saying some of the things in the Old Testament we don't have to follow anymore. But you look at like Mormonism, heavily believed in the whole you can marry more than one woman. And then our government said, if you want to become a state, Utah, you got to stop doing that. And they're like, okay, we'll change our mindset on that. And that's kind of like, I guess the same thing kind of with Black Hebrew Israelites, where, the original grouping was only we can enter heaven. And then they're kind of like, well, we looked at the Bible a little bit and we'll allow the white folk in. So that's kind of where you can definitely kind of say it's almost a cult because it's adapting itself to kind
For
of
sure.
change.
It's definitely a theology that's evolved and it continues to evolve. Uh, it's not quite the same as Mormonism, but some one of the things that some of the groups do is they do allow polygamous marriages. So some Black Hebrew Israelite men, depending on which group you're in, you can have up to 6 wives in Black Hebrew Israelism, which is more than Mormons and Muslims.
Take my advice. One wife is enough.
There you go. There you go. So most groups have moved away from that, but again, I think some of the extreme groups still do that. So
I couldn't handle two Maddies, that's for sure.
the moderate groups, most of them, pretty much all Black Hebrew Israelites, follow some of the Old Testament laws that we no longer follow anymore. So for them, they put a lot of emphasis on some of the Levitical laws. So a lot of them won't eat pork. A lot of them won't eat shellfish. They'll do some of the other things in the Old Testament that Christians won't no longer practice.
Yeah.
But I'm going to end off the podcast with the extreme groups because these are the really crazy ones. So these ones actually, although they believe most white people are going to hell, they believe some white people will be in heaven, but not for nice reasons. Not for nice reasons. They say that in heaven, God will provide some white people to his true children, the Hebrew Israelites, to be slaves for them. And so I talked to one guy near Atlanta a few years ago, and he was just saying he's just like, Sahil, he's like, hey, you know I don't want to have to pick up my trash or do my laundry in heaven. He said, my God, Yahushai, Black Jesus, is going to give me white people to do all the chores for me. And he said, hey, they'll actually be happy doing it. They'll be given natures, their true natures, which is to serve the children of God. So they'll actually be happy being slaves of the Israelites because that is the position God has given to them. Now, some of them express a heaven on earth kind of deal. So um, I'll send some pictures to you. But what they'll do is uh, they've they've actually gotten some white people to kind of like start being their servants here on earth. And I don't know why some of these white people do it, but some of them, like I've seen photos of some of these white people bowing down to the Hebrew Israelites and licking their boots, literally.
Oh my word.
Yeah, I've seen. You can look up pictures, and you'll see a Black Hebrew Israelite. He'll be wearing these big black boots. He'll stick it out in front of the white person, and the white person will get on their knees and lick the boot. And they're saying, like, yeah, this is your way of getting into heaven. If you keep serving us here on earth, you'll be allowed into heaven to be our servants up there, rather than going to hell one day.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah, no, it
That's
is.
like that's like I look forward to going to heaven because I look forward to worshiping with our Lord. But I also kind of like can't wait to get up there and then like look at the Mormons or the Black Hebrew Israelites and be like, man, were you dead wrong?
Oh yeah, no, for
they
sure.
get they get up there and they're like, why are you white? And then they're like, where's my slaves? And they're like, well, here's the thing, you don't need them up here.
Well, yeah, and this isn't a theology podcast, but really with these beliefs, if you actually look into it, a lot of them deny the divinity of Jesus. They think that Jesus is the Son of God, but he isn't quite God, and there's some other issues with that. Uh, but yeah, I think that really mostly does it for the Hebrew Israelite movement. Um, Most people coming to into this ideology today, again, are of the more moderate stream, but still, even with the moderate stream, it's a bad ideology. It's a dangerous ideology, and it's one of those things where I just pray for Black people, and I just hope, like, hey, that they find peace in other things, because this ideology is not it's not going to provide them peace. It's not going to provide them comfort. But I think
Yeah.
for people that buy into this, it only causes more anger and resentment. So
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess. Oh, yeah. I mean, Black Hebrew Israelites, man. This is our last cult we're covering, and we kind of went with one that's still ongoing. We might. I wouldn't say we get rid of cults completely on this podcast. I think we'll definitely. I think the last kind of big cult we'll probably cover is Mormonism, and then that'll be kind of like, I guess, our last podcast. Not last podcast. Our last like topic coverage of cults. And that's just because I mean we did, I think we kept it pretty lighthearted throughout this episode, and that's what we're trying to do. We want to have a fun time telling these ghost stories, telling these mysteries, telling about these cryptids. We want to have a spooky time that's a fun time and people to laugh and everything. And it's kind of hard to do with some cults. So I think that'll about do it for the Black Hebrew Israelites. We appreciate you guys listening. If you want to, you can go follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Beyond the Campfire. You can find us on TikTok at Beyond the Campfire Podcast. And then you can listen to us on all podcasting platforms, even on YouTube. And on everything else, it's Beyond the Campfire. On YouTube, it's Beyond the Campfire Podcast, which actually will probably be changed here shortly. So that'll be Beyond the Media, just so we can kind of have all of our stuff on one folder. So Steven's episode should be coming out Monday. I think
that's
we're
yeah,
yeah, I
working
think
to get beyond the culture out there. So
yep. So we'll try to get Beyond the Culture out on Monday morning. Look forward to that. Steven's going to be talking about the debate and I guess any other news that happened this past week. And then that'll be kind of like every Monday, you'll have Beyond the Culture. Every Friday, you'll have Beyond the Media. And then you'll get your news, and then you'll get to the weekend and partied up with us again. So thank y'all again for listening. And next week, Stephen will be covering one of our kind of first really big ghost stories, the Bell Witch in Tennessee. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, anything else before we close out, Steve?
Yeah, I think that'll do it. So
thank y'all guys, and y'all have a good rest of the weekend. Don't blow yourselves up with fireworks. And but if you do, make sure you get it on camera. Okay, that's like the only reason you should blow yourself up with fireworks. So stay safe out there, and y'all have a good rest of the weekend.